Good morning. It's Tuesday, April 6th, and we who live in New York are about to see some of the largest taxes in the country applied to us. They're planning to raise taxes on the very wealthy. And I don't just mean wealthy, I mean very, very wealthy, people who earn over $5 million a year. Now, I don't fall into that category. I don't know many people that do fall into that category. Now, this is all part of the final terms of the Empire State's mammoth $200 billion spending proposal, including the so-called millionaire's tax. Now, if this bill goes through, New York City's wealthiest will pay the highest combined state and income tax in the country. Is that something to be proud of? I'm not sure. I think people do have to pay their fair share. And we are in trouble in many places in this country. So I'm not necessarily against a tax increase. But I'm not sure that the way they're doing it is correct. I mean, I appreciate that people who make $5 million and plus a year should pay more in taxes. But I'm not so sure that people who make, say, $500,000 shouldn't be taxed a little bit more. So I have to give this thing a lot more thought before I categorically say it's crazy. Now, I don't want to bore you with the details of the different tax brackets that they're going to put in, but they're adding a couple of new tax brackets. But let's talk about what the additional money is going for. They would use the additional tax money for schools. They want to up the spending for schools, which I think is always a good idea. Education is a wonder. But then they want to provide funds for undocumented workers. Now, I'm against that. If you're an undocumented worker, you shouldn't be getting any money. I don't even know what it means when they talk about undocumented workers. I know there are many of them that probably pay income taxes, etc. But maybe they don't if they're undocumented. But certainly, why would they fall into a special category, along with small businesses and tenants who are behind in their rent? Why do undocumented workers fall into this category? The fund set up for these workers is called the Excluded Workers Fund, and it's designed at providing checks to an estimated 300,000 New Yorkers who are impacted by the coronavirus and who are ineligible to receive federal unemployment benefits and pandemic-related aid due to the issues like their immigration status. Well, right now, I'm against throwing these people out of the country. And many of them have been law-abiding citizens, so I have no problem with that. But I think if you got in here illegally, you're not entitled to anything. If you want to be entitled to what U.S. citizens get, then you should be working hard to become a citizen. Now, if that's a problem for you, that's fine, but you shouldn't be rewarded in any way, shape, or form. So to put aside $2.1 billion and raise taxes to get that money and call it the Excluded Workers Fund is a joke. There's a lot of other people who could use that money. So I don't know how I feel about it, but I certainly don't want to go out of my way to give undocumented workers money. Now, I am sure that those undocumented workers are probably not being treated as well as a documented worker would be treated. But I don't know that. I don't have the real facts on that, so I'm not going to say any more about it. And I'm not the only one that feels this way. There's many people in the state legislature of New York that are fighting this, many Democrats who are fighting this. They do not agree with its Excluded Workers Fund. And I can tell you one thing for sure, if this fund is included in the budget and it passes through, then the Republicans will be able to claim this as a huge mistake by the Democrats. And they will use that in the next election to get more Republicans elected. So that is another reason why there are many Democrats in the state legislature that do not necessarily agree with the excluded workers fund. In fact, some Democrats called it the big revolt. Another sticking point with respect to this fund is that it would be non-taxable. Regular unemployment insurance is taxable income. But they're saying that this fund, this grant, will not be taxable. And this reminds me of the fight that took place in 2019 when they voted to grant driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. And that was approved by a very narrow vote in the state legislature. And all 6 Long Island Democrats voted against it. Now, I give them credit for voting against it. But on the other hand, these people need to have a way of getting to work if they're going to contribute to anything. So I'll give them a pass on the driver's license, and we'll let it go at that. But here's an interesting thing also. This excluded workers fund, right, has a table of how the funds are going to be distributed. So if an individual has the proper qualifications, they could receive as much as $16,000 dating back to April of 2020. And depending on what their qualifications say, I think the minimum amount they can receive would be $3,200. That's for people, as they said, with less documentation. But there's a big fight amongst the lawmakers on how individuals would prove eligibility. Some want employers to give a written confirmation, pay stubs, and other records, whereas others argue workers fearing retribution from the federal government should be able to present documents similar to those permissible in court appearances, like text messages or photos showing proof of work. Now, this thing really sucks in my mind that we have people that are, I don't want to call them criminals. That's too harsh a word. But they're here illegally. And maybe they're hardworking and maybe they did wonderful things for the 20 or 30 or 10 or 5 years or however long they're here. But now they're in a situation where they're going to get a free ride for in some way, shape, or form. And maybe free ride is too harsh a term. But they don't have the necessary documentation to collect this money. And there are probably many employers who will be hesitant to give documentation to these people since they're probably hired. There must be a law against hiring people who are undocumented. I don't know, it's a serious crime, but it might involve being fined or something like that. You know, I know when I ran the company, we had many people who were immigrants, but they all had a green card. You couldn't work for us without a green card. So I don't know what's going on with the undocumented. But to me, it's a big hole, and somebody shouldn't be running around trying to give these people money, especially if they're going to have difficulty qualifying in some way, shape, or form. So it's probably more expensive to just give them the money than it is to go through all the documentation and everything. Anyhow, there's got to be a better way, which I can say almost every day when it comes to our government. There's got to be a better way to do things. And that's all I want to say this morning. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.